Hello, friends. Welcome back to Igniting Imagination. I'm your host, Lisa Greenwood, and joining me is my co host for this season and our 2024 Distinguished Locke Innovative Leader, the Reverend Dr. Kenda Creasy Dean. Hi, Kenda.
It's so fun to be with you.
Wonderful. So, this is the second of our 4 episodes with Kenda, and we're digging into innovation in the church through conversations with our 2024 class of Locke Innovative Leaders. Each Locke leader is envisioning new ways to serve their mission field, and they inspire others to join them in growing the impact of the church and nourishing their communities. So, Kenda, we're asking all of our 2024 Locke leaders to reflect on what they think makes them an innovative leader. And I'd like to turn the tables a bit and ask you to respond to that question. So, what does being recognized as an innovative leader mean for you? What do you think is particularly innovative about your ministry?
I suppose the recognition is mostly just surprised that people are noticing that people are doing things a little differently, maybe. I heard a definition recently about this kind of missional innovation that I liked. It's from Luke Edwards, who's in North Carolina, and he talked about innovation as basically, I'm not going to get this quite right, but trying new things in order to further the reign of God, you know,
Mm, mhm.
which was as succinct a handle for this as I think I've found, that's really what it is, right? We're trying to be about the work of Christ calls us to usher in God's kingdom, and we're not going to get it right a lot, so we got to keep trying.
Keep trying.
We
Yeah.
just have to try stuff, and I do think it's as basic as that. Um, it's not something that I don't think we'd even call it innovation in a lot of eras of our history. I
Mm,
would like to think we would have called it just Christian. This is what people do
being
who follow
faithful.
Christ. They won't stop trying. They won't give up until the tears stop.
Mm.
Um, so I hope that's what we're up to here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's certainly, obviously, we're not the only ones noticing. It just your name comes up all the time when we talk about innovation in ministry and what folks are doing. And I'm so grateful to the for the work that you're doing. And I'm wondering, where did you learn this? Like this leaning into innovation and trying the next thing. And are there folks along the way who have been particularly influential or supportive through this journey for you?
Well, I think like a lot of people, you don't set out to say, I want to be innovative. You set out to say, I want to do this thing and I don't know how to do it. So I
Yeah.
got to try some stuff. But I do think that one of the things that has been helpful were both people who believed in me along the way enough to make me,
Mm,
if you don't have people who believe in you, you won't try anything, right?
yeah.
Because you're too
Isn't that
afraid to
true?
fail. And I felt like I had lots of support, this both in terms of family and school and, seminary all the way through, where I felt like I had permission to take enough risk that I could fail a few and not lose the love of these people.
Mm,
And I'm aware that there are lots of people out there who don't get that,
mhm.
and that for them to be innovators is astonishing and miraculous and a gift. Um, it also helps to have people who, they don't model necessarily being great innovators, but they model people who aren't afraid to try stuff.
Yeah.
And I am grateful. This is going to sound like a shameless plug, but I'm grateful I went to a little scrappy seminary,
Mhm.
Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C., where, they were always in this, they weren't a big ship. They were a little rowboat, and they could
Mm,
turn on a dime as a result.
mm.
They were also in danger of perishing a lot, because they were a little rowboat comparatively. They're not as small as some, but they're a lot smaller than the place I teach. And, you know, it allowed me to see people who would simply try things and they're still like that. They try
That's
things
what
and
I was gonna say, they're still
try
doing it. Yeah.
And they keep trying them. That has to do with the leadership, that has to do with the culture of that place.
Mm,
But it's funny because I then came to a seminary where trying new things was not really part of the DNA.
mm,
And so you would things that felt normal to me felt revolutionary. So a lot of
mm.
innovation is your context, right?
Interesting.
But it does help to have some people in your life who tried some stuff, it didn't work, and you know what? They're still doing God's work,
Yeah.
and nobody died. So the standards are kind of low. If nobody dies, it's a win, you know. So
Oh, well, you are not only doing amazing work and trying new things, but you have encouraged those of us in ministry, in youth ministry and in pastoral ministry for decades,
mm,
sister. And your fingerprints are all over the place. It is beautiful, and I'm so grateful to you. Yeah, yeah. So today we are talking to 2024 Locke Innovative Leader Moy Mendez. And I'm going to give you just a quick, brief bio, but you all can check our show notes for the full bio and relevant links to today's episode. So, Moy serves as the executive director of the Hope Center, a dynamic nonprofit organization committed to catalyzing community economic development. Moy holds an associate's degree in computer programming from Moraine Valley Community College, a bachelor's degree in theology from Christian Life College, and a master's degree in philosophy of religion from Trinity International University, and is currently enrolled in an MBA program at Loyola in Chicago. So, Kenda, what stood out to you in our conversation with Moy?
well, what an incredible ministry he has given us. We were talking about this earlier, but I think it is really interesting that his name is from the name for Moses,
Yeah.
and he feels that keenly. He draws that image into himself, and it helps explain a lot of what he does as he
Mm.
tries to lead people um, as an unlikely leader. That's the way
Yeah.
he thinks about
Yeah.
himself. The humility of his leadership is just written all over everything he does. And one of the things that I loved about this conversation was we get a really textured description of what his ministry looks like
Mm.
and what it's like in this very particular neighborhood with these very particular people and all of the different things they've tried. We were talking about trying stuff,
Mm-hmm.
all of the ways they've
Mm-hmm.
tried different things to make these people's lives more full. I also love the way he used the word labs instead of ministries. I thought that is so real. And the other thing that I appreciated about his approach to talking about innovation was he thinks about it as evangelism, but he has a very nuanced understanding of evangelism where he talks about how people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care,
Yeah.
and the his goal with evangelism is to pique people's curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and he's not talking about trying to go co-opt people for the church. He's talking about neighboring them in such a way that they're curious about where does this kind of neighboring come from. That was beautiful.
Yes. Yes. So, in this notion of neighboring, I think how that connects with his understanding of himself with his name, his Moses name, and how he is in his just deep humility, decentering himself. And
Yeah, absolutely.
it's really, I mean, it's just so prevalent in everything he shares, how much he decenters himself, and
Yeah,
it's beautiful. So
it was
let's
beautiful.
listen to our conversation with Moy Mendez. Hi, Moy. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to it. So, I wanted to start with a quote from you that we read in an article about your ministry in faith and leadership. And you said, I'm still a pastor in a sense, but my calling is behind a platform that empowers people. that helps people see their potential and increases their agency, a platform that enriches the community and changes culture. So, tell us about your calling. What led you into ministry, and how are you living that out now through this new platform that is Hope Center?
hmm Yeah, when my parents immigrated from Mexico, they landed in Blue Island.
Mm,
Blue Island is a low to moderate income community, and I was well encompassed with a lot of the existential realities that come alongside with living in a community that has disparate challenges. Um, so, understanding the reality of that context um, came with times that was very challenging, but also uh, uh, um, rewarding in the sense that my goal at one point was to figure out how could I be part of the healing process. Well, I had moved out of the community. Lo and behold, my pastor, the church that I was attending, my pastor said, "Hey, Moy, we bought a building in Blue Island, and you're from Blue Island." He's like, "This is going to be a great connection." I had just graduated from seminary. So I was like, okay, wow, talk about God moments, talk about, these moments that you can't fully predict. And it was disheartening. It was disheartening in a sense to do ministry in an area where you feel that you could do more than just preach the word. It's hard when people come up during prayer time and you're trying to minister to people and you understand that some of the things that they need involve more than just prayer. They're practical things. How could we empower people in practical ways? People are coming in and they're praying for, please pray for my health. I'm struggling with high blood pressure and diabetes. When you know that if there's some of the things that we could do in terms of changing the diet, especially within lower income communities, we could make a lot of difference within your personal health, which is one of the reasons why we're not only growing a lot of vegetation to tackle food insecurities, but also to improve the quality of life.
mm,
So I pastored that particular campus for 2 years, and then a pandemic happened. When the pandemic happened, I talked to my pastor, which is the from the larger campus, and I said, I have this idea. I have this idea to turn the CLC Blue Island into a nonprofit focused on community economic development. And he goes, well, tell me more. And we got into the weeds of the conversation. He goes, Moy, he goes, I will certainly, you have my blessing and I will do my best to support that in every way possible. And they have. So yeah, I'm still a pastor in a sense, launching this nonprofit, helping people. One of the areas that we help our community with, especially in our technology lab, is to be co-creators. As a pastor, what does it look like? It looks
mm,
like a pastor that's understand scripture saying that we are made in the image of God. So we are co-creators. So if we are, we also have this innate ability to imagine a better future, to create things with our hands. And as we teach our community how to create not only things with their hands, we teach them to cultivate a problem solving skills. So it's more than just
mm,
creating something, but it's also creating problem solving skills to bring sort of God shalom into the community.
Hmm.
mm. So, if we were to tour Hope Center, if we were to walk with you through the community, through your space, what would we see? Give us a picture.
Ah, I would love one day if you guys are in an area to come by. So first you would come to the front and you would look at the front of the building and think that it's a relatively small building. And
Mm,
it's funny because I just gave somebody a tour today. Um, and once we get to the basement part, everybody says, wow, this building is a lot bigger than what it looks like on the outside.
uh-huh,
So as you walk in, there's a lobby where we greet you. There's coffee in the front, and then that lobby is used for a lot of after school activities or a lot of our programming right next to the technology lab. Right next to that lobby area, the technology lab, it's encompassed with a whole bunch of 3D printers.
mm,
Next to that lab, and it's a nice room. We just so happen to sort of fall into this space, but it used to be an office from the owner of that particular building. So all of the windows are made out of glass, so you could see right out through the doors as you're cultivating these
mm,
imagine your imagination. All these good brain juices are flowing. So right outside of the technology lab is our computer lab. Right outside of the computer lab, you go upstairs and there's a sanctuary. The sanctuary now we use it for um, a lot of roundtable discussions where we host people who are from the community who have been able to either become entrepreneurs, who have gone to Ivy League schools. And what we do is we have roundtable discussions around what would it look like in order to inspire hope for people within the community to say, oh, wow, this person is an exemplary leader because they embody sort of who I am and my culture, my identity. I think I could possibly do what they're doing. So that's what we're looking to do. So as you leave the sanctuary, you go downstairs, and downstairs, it's a whole different world. The walls are all painted white, the floors are painted white, and you walk into this one room, and there's a room with a glass and a whole bunch of hydroponic machines. It looks very technical, stainless steel tables on the side, and a whole bunch of lights with vegetation growing everywhere. We
In
have
the
a total of
basement.
7 in a basement. Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay. And we have a total of 7 hydroponic machines, and
Mm.
each one of our hydroponic machines grows 25 pounds of vegetables in 28 days. They use 95% less water, 98% less land. We're not only working on the marketing of the product, feeding the community because we donate a lot of our food, but we're moving into the educational part. Right now, I thank God I don't have any problems with insulin resistance problems. Our family doesn't have a history of diabetes, but I do have a glucose monitor on me. And I have it on me as we're leading up to this event because I read a book called Glucose Revolution to learn a little bit about how you front load a lot of complex carbs in order to decrease the insulin spikes. So you could actually eat a cupcake, and if you eat it, it'll spike your your insulin levels, and it'll keep spiking it throughout the day, which is dangerous. But if you front load it with just a few complex carbs, I mean, let's just say broccoli or a salad, it'll spike up and then it'll go down and it won't cause as much problem. So we want to educate our community on the importance of eating healthy and what eating cruciferous vegetables does to the body. So leaving that room, you go into another hallway that we're still building up. There's 2 rooms that we are currently in the works of still developing, but one of them is going to be a room where we pickle, freeze dry, and can a lot of the foods. And then another room, we have a vision for it to be our aquaponics room. So we're hoping to get a 600-gallon tank for our fish and a few hydroponic machines that are going to have a symbiotic relationship so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to feed our community with a better source of protein and some cruciferous vegetables, and hopefully change the way our community thinks about food and access to food. So you leave that area, you go upstairs, there's an office area. After that office area, there's a garage with 16-foot ceilings, a car lift, a heater for the winter, a fan for the summer. They have their own slop sink, their own washroom, their own pneumatic and electrical tools. And then right outside, as you open the garage, you see this beautiful garden that's fenced in with this nice rustic wooden fence, chicken farm in the back, 1,200 square foot greenhouse. And as you walk through the back, you see this butterfly garden that we've cultivated so that we could feed the monarch butterflies that just so happen to come from the same part of Mexico that my family immigrated from, Michoacan, Mexico. So there's a mural of a butterfly, and it's symbolic of the immigrant sort of journey. And then at the very end, to finish the tour, there's a walkway that's focused on connecting with God and connecting with nature. You know, I can't tell you how much the Word of God has impacted me in my sense of mental wellness and health, spiritual disciplines, or even like the Celtic Way and El Camino have benefited me greatly. I also read a book from Florence, I believe it's Florence Williams. It's called Nature Fix. It's a book on how we're intrinsically wired to sort of be outside. So as you finish that little walkway at the back, there's an area where we just encourage everybody just to admire God's beauty and to pick out whatever they want from our garden, so long as they eat it there. So yeah, that would conclude the small, apparently small Hope Center that I hope you all visit one day.
So
Fabulous.
I'm keying off. I'm jumping in because I love the quote that you imagine Hope Center as the modern look of evangelism.
Mhm.
So could you talk about that?
Yeah. There's this one quote, I forget who it comes from. I mean, I heard John Maxwell regurgitate it, but he said,
Mhm.
people don't want to know how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
Um, and what I noticed, and you know, it was difficult as you could imagine. Having gone from the marketplace into ministry, and then from ministry with this aspiring hope to become a pastor, only to find that you're serving in a church setting and it feels like a very insular sort of community. We're not impacting, we're not inviting. We've had more people come to the Hope Center and have spiritual conversations, and even some come to faith than we did when through the whole time we were open as a church. So that says a lot when Christians are at the forefront of creating or at least spearheading God's shalom in a community. People become curious and people want to know why you're actually there. And that's why I love when I hear, oh, Christians started some of the first hospitals, some of the first academic institutions. It's like we have a history. It's in our DNA to be trailblazers into being able to minister to people in a diametrically different way. And sometimes it may be juxtaposed to what the conventional paradigm shows us, but in that, there's a new antithesis that we could find that may be just as effective.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the consistent themes we've had over the 4 years that we've been awarding the Lock Leader Award, we now have 17 Lock Leaders, including
Wow.
you. And one of the consistent themes has been this idea of neighboring, like
Mhm.
investing deeply in a particular place, bringing the gifts of the people together um, in the community for the good of all. And I'm curious what you would say about this theme of neighboring, not so much serving neighbor as being neighbor. What you've learned, how neighboring has been part of your ministry and now the ministry of Hope Center. Does that resonate
Yeah.
with you? And what is it? How is it part of what you're doing?
Yeah, I want to make sure I answer your question appropriately. So, in terms of being a neighbor to our community, sort of like the friendship part that goes into it. So, I'll answer it on two levels. Number one, you know, there's three things that are very central to the Latino culture. You know, I mean, it's family, faith, and work. But family consists of the larger community. Whenever you have a family party, you don't just have, mom and dad there. You have grandma there, great grandma there. You have the cousins, the third cousins, the fourth cousins, and everybody calls each other cousins. And even people from the outside of the community come stop by to
Hmm.
drink some horchata and some tacos. So it's like everybody comes by. So there's this deep sense of sort of ingrained community neighboring that exists within Latino communities. And part of that is working together. But on that's on one layer. I am very sort of community oriented in nature. But the other part is my um, lure as a Christian to be a neighbor within a biblical sense. I read this book by Tim Nelson titled The Economics of Neighborly Love. And I
Mm.
appreciated the way that he constructed this idea. He said, what if this person, as Jesus was talking about the Good Samaritan, what if the Good Samaritan had a compassion but not capacity? Or what if he had capacity of not compassion? He said it actually takes two. It takes for you to couple compassion and capacity to reach your neighbor and to love them. Um, that, as you could imagine, revolutionized the way that I thought about reaching our neighbors and our community behind us. It's interesting because they would call the cops on us before when we were at church, when we would park on their parking lot. Now they call me and they say, "Hey, I'm noticing there's some like a suspicious car in front of the Hope Center. I just wanted to let you know." Is that So it's funny. We've
Hmm.
built that kind of
Wow.
relationship now. So
Yeah.
uh, we're not. Well, this is funny because we're not supposed to have roosters. And we didn't go out and buy a rooster, but they said that there's 99.9% chance that one of our chicks could be a rooster. Well, it just so happened that we got locked in that one. So we don't want to make a chicken dinner out of him. So he's hanging out with us. Um, so the roosters roost. It wakes everybody up in the morning. But I asked our neighbors just out of courtesy, is it okay? I just didn't want to assume. In my head, I'm thinking, well, you know, part of the areas in Mexico are probably from. We're all used to this anyway, but I just didn't want to assume that. So I asked them. I said, "Is the rooster bothering you?" Just because if it
Mhm.
is, then I want to be mindful of that, and we could probably donate him to a farm or something. But they
Uh-huh.
said, "No, he's great, and that's fine." So yeah, on two levels, it means engaging our community to do life with them. On another
Mm,
level, it means coupling our compassion and capacity to
Mhm.
empower them and to
mm,
increase their level of self agency.
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I love that compassion and capacity. So, to what extent is the capacity already there? Are you cultivating compassion and capacity? Are you what is your role in that? Does that
Yeah,
question
yeah.
make sense?
Let me know if I answer it correctly, because I think
I
I
don't
may
yeah.
understand.
I don't know that there is a
Um,
correct answer. I'm just curious about it.
so I consider myself sort of like the person leading the orchestra. There's a
Mm,
lot of moving parts to what we do, and I'm doing my best that I can to synthesize all of these moving parts together. And part of that is bringing together people who already have compassion for the community.
Mhm.
Sometimes all they need is a place to express their compassion, and we provide that. Um, we have some of our volunteers that actually come from the community. The folks that I met with this past Saturday that are helping us with our hydroponics initiatives, they're all volunteers.
mm,
And they came from the community because they attended one of our workshops and they just fell in love with this idea that we're doing this just because we love our community. They couldn't believe it. They're like,
mhm,
oh, so these classes are free? So, and I'm like, well,
mm,
yeah, they are to you, but the capacity parts comes in me inviting people uh, to partner up with us,
mm.
to support what we're doing. And sometimes, the invitation works out great. People sort of resonate with what we're doing, and sometimes they don't, and it's okay. But my part is the one that's directing the orchestra is how do I invite the right people to partner up with us financially so that they could give us the capacity in order to express this level of compassion that we have for the community. So that's the way that I sort of bring the two about and express the two in our community.
Nice. So you're really creating the environment in which that capacity and compassion can come together for good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I could push the analogy and say, in an orchestra, like sometimes you need a little more from the violins, or you need a little more over here from the, from the
Right.
horns, or and but it's all there. It's just about getting them
Right.
in the space together. And again, I may be pushing it too far,
No, no,
but I love
you're
that
right
image.
on point.
I love that image. Yeah, yeah. So, what's your big dream for Hope Center?
Yeah. Well, I really hope that within the next 5 years, we could duplicate what we're doing and create a
Mm,
playbook that has an a la carte
mm,
menu for churches who desire to do the same thing.
mm,
That's been my vision for the last year, and that's how do I continue to take copious notes, continue to pilot some of the programs that we have in order for us to present these ideas to faith communities throughout, starting here in Chicago, where not only I could present to them an a la carte menu of something that may work for them. Let's just say somebody says, Moy, we're not looking to incorporate the technology part right now, but we'd like to incorporate the agricultural side with mental wellness. What we could do is we could check out their space and train them while we're actually serving the community, and then share our playbook on how to recruit volunteers, how to bring about the resources to do it, um, how to get your community stakeholders invested in what you're doing. Now, if we could do that well within 5 years and multiply our efforts here, it's not so much about multiplying the Hope Center, because every time we multiply ourselves, it's going to be vicariously through a church. It's not going to be through the Hope Center. If we could do that well, I'm hoping that in 10 years, we could do that nationwide. And ultimately, the BHAG, in Jim Collins's word,
Yeah.
is to do it in Latin America, to go back to the community that my family's from, Michoacan,
Mm.
Mexico, which is one of the places that's sort of struggles with the drugs more than anything, the drug cartels, and to be able to empower the people there, because the work that I do has initially started with my grandfather, who was um, somebody that deeply cared for his community. There's still a school that was there. It was one of the school that they named after him for the work that he did in his community. So I would love to, go to Latin America, Mexico City, Argentina, Chile, El Salvador, and share some of these models that I found, and hopefully bring God's shalom to, the Americas.
Wow. That's fabulous. That's
Incredible.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that you're thinking so big. I love this. This is like you said, the BHAG, it's bigger than anything that you can see in this moment, but God's part of it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Kenda, were you going to jump in?
Uh, I know I'm just so taken by the I mean, on the one hand, the scale of it's astonishing, right? The fact that you, you don't we're not just talking a community garden. We're talking about hydroponics. We're talking about, the kind of dense yield that comes in that. I mean, it's a whole different way of thinking about um, the way of going about um, in that case, food resources. But at the same time, it's very simple, you
Mm,
know? People are hungry, they need food, so we're gonna make food, I mean, and you say that you kinda have left your pastoral ministry role officially, despite the fact you're definitely still being a shepherd to these people in
Absolutely.
ways that are, very straightforward and very direct. And I can't help but think that that we've just been colossally distracted from the role of the pastor, the role
Mm-hmm.
of the shepherd, in the last I don't know how long that's been going on. And what a question that comes up a lot in work that I'm doing with innovation in churches is people are into these new ministries, but they say, yeah, but is it the church? You know? Or is it, just doing something good in the community? And, I was taken by a comment that, Ryan Bonfiglio, who teaches at Candler, said, and he said, he's a Bible scholar, and he said, "You know, when Jesus was first resurrected, nobody recognized him either. So maybe we're not gonna recognize the resurrected church, not at
mm,
first."
mm.
And I sort of took that thought and it kept playing its way through my head, and I kept thinking, well, also, the people who first recognized, Jesus as Christ, they weren't the church people, they weren't the bride and the groom, they were the servants, they were the people who struggle. And maybe the people who struggle will recognize the resurrected church first too. We're
Mm-hmm.
right in the thick of that.
Yeah.
And when people ask about what is it the church? Is it maybe we are overthinking this. You
Yeah.
know?
Right.
So I wish I had a question for you on that. I'm just so moved by what it is you're doing and by how straightforward it is.
Yeah, and to answer that question, I mean, as you could imagine, um, I still have a commitment to add spiritual depth to what we do. So it can come in the form of spiritual conversations, but it, if if I had it my way, and I would say, Moy, what would you like 5 years to look like? I would like to see a motley crew of people from the community that come in and they're part of what we're doing, but they sit down and they engage with us with within these spiritual conversations, having inductive Bible studies.
Yeah.
We could have roundtable discussions, and again, that church community is going to look different. There's no doubts about it that the Word of God changes the way that we think. It challenges the way that we think.
Yeah.
But being able to
Right.
have inductive Bible studies and have conversations where we could reason with people in the community who are having spiritual questions, especially now where we're having more issues within an area of mental wellness than it seems like any other time, and it's just exacerbating.
Yeah.
I do
Right.
believe that in Scripture, especially as a pastor, that we do have answers within the Bible, but I feel that people have heard, um, they've heard us Christians more for what we stand against more than what we stand for. And if we could begin to change that paradigm by engaging our community with some of the things that we stand for, I think, yeah, we might have a different model, an antithesis to something that's still committed to Scripture, but yet a different paradigmatic way of doing
Yeah.
church. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually a good lead in to this next question, I think. Kenda talks about in her book that we innovate not for innovation's sake, but we innovate
Mhm.
for love. And I'm wondering
Yeah.
what that means for you related to your
Mhm.
ministry.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. The best example that I could think of is just, the love of a mother for those of us who have been blessed with just loving mothers. They find ways, they figure it out. And, I remember my mom, there's this place, restaurant that opened up in Blue Island, and they served burritos that were the size of footballs. And my mom would order one and she would cut it up into 15 tacos to feed us. Yeah, that level of love and innovation taught me how to innovate for those things that you love.
Yeah.
And you'll do anything. And you'll keep trying different things, whatever it takes. It's
Whatever it
beautiful.
takes.
Yeah.
Mm. That uh, that is both a brilliant example of innovation to turn a football-sized burrito into a meal for a family. Um, but, your mom didn't set out to be innovative, you know?
Right.
Right.
Here were these people she loved and cared for, and this is what she did.
Yeah.
Um, I find that a really compelling image of God, you know?
Yeah,
So,
because in the same way, that's sort of the heart, the impetus behind me finding innovative ways to reach my community.
yeah,
Um, how
yeah,
do I do it? All I know is that just as my mom knew she had to feed a whole bunch of kids, I know that I want to empower our community. So figuring out ways how to do that, you just figure it
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Well, as we're coming to a close here, I have I don't wanna leave this moment too quickly, but I have the, task of throwing you, the rapid fire questions
Oh,
to change the energy here just a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Um, so anyway, real quick, is there a mentor in your life you wanna give a shout out to that
Oh,
helped
yeah.
you into this
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, Pastor Thomas. Pastor
Mhm.
Thomas is from Kerala, India. He came
Oh,
to the
yeah.
United States studying microbiology, hoping to become a doctor. And he took a liking unto me. And he saw something in me that
Mhm.
he felt he wanted to cultivate. So he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I'd like for you to join my Bible study." We did. And after a while, he's the one that actually invited me to leave my career of 13 years and go into ministry. And he just checked in with me last week.
Yeah.
He's been retired, but yeah, he still deeply cares about me. I consider him a spiritual father, and he considers me a spiritual son. So yeah, Pastor Thomas has been very well invested in me. But even recently, just my pastor in my church, Pastor Jerry McQuay and Brett McQuay, they've just been big champions, supporting me all along the way, giving me a level of liberty, saying, "Hey, Moy, we trust you." Um, you want to do something, we trust you, we believe in you, and we'll
Yeah.
support it. So yeah, I'm very grateful. um,
So yeah, so great. I mean, I know that you're getting an MBA right now, and
yeah.
I'd love to know, I mean, this is not something you probably saw coming after theological education, right? So how does it intersect for you with ministry?
Yeah, well, one thing is, yeah, I'm intellectually curious, and I would have never known that in high school. But part of that is also my mentor, Pastor Thomas. I mean,
Okay.
most South Asians are also, just lifelong students, and he's the one that said, "Hey, Moy, I really want to encourage you to just, move in your career, move in your sort of educational journey." And he's like, "Okay, after you're done with this MBA, are you ready for a DMin?" That's what he said. So so he's still putting pressure on me and saying, "Hey, I want you to be the best that you could be. Equip yourself for every season." And
Mm,
that's what I love about him, is just his encouragement along the way, where he's
yeah.
just, encouraged me to continue this journey. So yeah, I'm just as excited to learn and apply what I learn as well.
Well, it sounds like you've got the spiritual discipline of study down pat. Is there a spiritual discipline that kinda keeps you alive in all of this?
I mean, center in prayer certainly helps me. I do have ADHD, so I have to, part of me being very intellectually curious and reading a lot and doing a lot of things sort of fits within the way that God wired me. But also centering prayer centers me.
Yeah.
Mm,
So it
Yeah.
allows me to sort of calm my mind, center my spirit. Breathe prayer is another spiritual discipline that helps me. So those are two of my favorite spiritual disciplines.
mm.
And we've been asking everybody this question, so I'd be curious about what you have to say about it too. What is an old thing that you see passing away,
Mhm.
um, at with God's blessing, and a new thing God is doing that's crusting on the horizon?
Oh, wow. Well, I can't put my finger on that specifically, just because there's so many moving parts. But one thing that comes to mind is, I really believe that, verse that talks about the old wineskins and the new wine not being compatible. I really believe that my old way of thinking, there's certain things about my old way of thinking that God says, let's start moving away from these old ways of thinking,
Yeah.
and understand that, look, God is creating a new way. I need to be dexterous. And having that sort of level of dexterity and moving forward is going to
Mhm.
allow me to thrive in this new season where God
Yeah.
has me. So that's been sort of my theme for the last 6 months, is more get rid of that old wineskin, just because God is bringing you into a new
Mm.
territory where I'm going to be challenged,
Wow.
I'm going to be stretched, and I have to have that level of dexterity. Uh, so
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah,
Yes. I think that's really helpful language as we think about so often when we feel like we're butting up against something that it doesn't feel quite right. If we can remember that there sometimes are old wineskins that we need to let go of. And
yeah.
so that's a real gift. And Moy, you are a gift. Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
love your commitment and your energy and your passion and your heart. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.